My name is Kristen Lima, Master's Student, School of Behavioral Sciences at Liberty University. This is my Interpersonal Communication Plan assignment, and it is October 17th, 2021. I'm going to go over some key points during my presentation. The first is, what is good communication versus bad communication, and why does it matter? Who am I? The introduction to my personality profile and background. Unlearning bad communication habits, rethinking the role of the listener, my communication barriers, both personal and professional, my goals, both personal and professional in communication, and my communication implementation plan, both personal and professional. So, good communication versus poor communication. What is the difference? Good communication sets the stage for the foundation to a strong therapeutic alliance between someone in the helping profession and their client, or it sets a good foundation for communication, for intimacy, and a deep, satisfying relationship between two people personally. We often think of communication simply as what we say without considering the listener, but this simply isn't accurate. Peterson, 2015, describes communication as an ebb and a flow of active listening and then speaking between two or more people identified as the talker and the listener. Good communication facilitates depth of relationship rather than simply sitting at the surface of a relationship. My personality blend, according to Carbonell, 2008, is a high D and a high I. The strengths of a high D are that we get things accomplished, we're self-starters, and we take charge. But with strengths come weaknesses, and some of the weaknesses of a high D are overlooking people and not being attentive to the needs and the feelings of others, which can severely impact good communication. The strengths of a high I are that we're inspirational and we motivate others, but the weaknesses of a high I are that we have a tendency to be people-pleasing and attentive to details unless they serve us, and can be overly sensitive or emotional. So how does that personality profile affect communication? I'm motivated by a desire to help, but I need to be cautious of people-pleasing. I need to actively listen by being mindful of body language, according to France and Weichel, 2020. I need to provide safety to the listener by withholding judgment, according to Peterson, 2015. And also need to provide understanding and clarifying questions, according to Peterson, 2015. Manusov et al., 2020, says I need to practice mindfulness when I'm listening to others. And Colden et al., 2018, indicates that I need to be aware of the importance of warmth and genuineness. Learned communication. Each of us have developed communication patterns that are, in effect, a combination of nature and nurture from when we were younger. I grew up in a household where we didn't discuss hard things. Difficult things were bottled up by family members until somebody eventually went flat-brained, which is the term that Peterson, 2015, uses. Flat-brained is when the emotions begin to well up in the stomach and they cause an effect where the brain kind of goes flat, and either an explosion verbally happens or a shutdown happens. Both are harmful to communication. A divorce in my early 30s also reinforced that I shouldn't share my feelings or hard things because I didn't want to shift the status quo by having uncomfortable conversations that could result in someone leaving. The results were that I avoided tough moments and conversations altogether, which has not served me personally nor professionally, and defensiveness became a survival skill. So, unlearning bad communication habits. How did I do that? Stephen Covey, according to Badinsky and Schultz in 2015, says most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. Badinsky and Schultz in 2015 also said that listening, the art of listening, is attending to reality instead of our self-serving view of things. I've had to learn to actively listen to what others are saying and not read into what they're saying, nor listen to what they're saying through the eyes of judgment or some preconceived notion that I had about them. Badinsky and Schultz in 2015 also tell us to eliminate the distractions, both internal and external, and focus on the talker. They say that multitasking is a myth that we really need to guard ourselves against. And Peterson indicates that we need to stop interrupting, fixing, advising, agreeing, and defending. Interrupting stops the flow of the conversation and stops the flow of the thought and the feeling of the talker. Fixing and advising communicate to the talker that I know better than you about your life and what you should do in this circumstance. And agreeing and defending also put a pause on the conversation and stop the flow of the conversation. My personal communication barriers were using the Perry Mason method when communicating, using indirect questions instead of simply asking a direct question to get information. The result of using the Perry Mason method, especially with my significant other, but also with other close friends and family members, is that they became annoyed with that method of communicating. Because rather than simply coming out directly with my thoughts or my feelings, I would beat around the bush and ask multiple other questions to try to get an answer that I was looking for. Another personal communication barrier has been ritual listening, preparing my answer without seeking to understand what the talker was saying, according to Peterson, 2015. Ritual listening hinders me personally and professionally because people don't feel heard when I'm doing that. This keeps me at the center of attention, even when it is their story, their feelings and thoughts that need expressing. This is where I need to be careful of where my personality profile can lean into that moment. And the last personal communication barrier is defending. Defending causes us just to be on opposing sides rather than explore what's being said together. My professional communication barriers have been taking the role of an advisor, which puts a stop to a conversation and tells a client that I know better than them what they should do with their lives. Taking the role of the fixer, which France and Weichel 2020 suggests creates a dependency on me as the therapist that is unhealthy. And interrupting, which doesn't allow the client to fully express themselves. My personal goals as it pertains to communication are to learn to speak directly, including my feelings and my thoughts, instead of trying to trap the other person into answering the way that I want or expect them to. To be more active, engaged, and a mindful listener, to express warmth in communication, and to communicate without becoming defensive. My professional goals are to stop advising clients, to stop trying to fix things for clients, and to stop interrupting clients. My personal strategies are that when interacting with my significant other, I'm going to first be sure to approach with warmth and empathy so that our discussions are safe places for both of us to speak, according to Peterson, 2015. I'm going to take the risk to self-disclose what I'm thinking and feeling instead of asking indirect questions to try to trap into an answer. I'm going to practice mindfulness in our conversations. According to Manusov et al., 2020, mindfulness is focusing attention on only one thing in the present moment, having less negative judgment, and the ability to describe what is occurring. And lastly, I'm going to practice much more active listening by not interrupting, asking more open-ended questions, reflecting what's being said, and asking clarifying questions when needed. My professional strategies are that I'm going to practice warmth and genuineness with each client, as these are positively correlated with positive client outcomes, according to Colden et al., 2020. I'm going to stop interrupting and continue to listen to my clients, asking more open-ended questions and letting them tell me their stories. And I'm going to refrain from advising my clients and trying to fix things for them, but rather I'm going to ask them open-ended questions that will help me to understand them better. My implementation plan is that I'm going to implement my personal communication plan by sitting down with my significant other, explaining what I've been learning, request that we use the talker listener cards that Peterson 2015 created, and hold myself accountable by asking him to point out if I have a flat brain moment and begin to go off course again. Professionally, I'm going to write notes for myself and seek supervision.